All right, so I'm back. All I did is stop the camera so I can get my 15 minutes because YouTube won't take more than 15 minutes. Blame YouTube. Okay, so now that's our second study. Now comes our third study. This is the classic in social psychology. Stanley Milgram said, okay, this is lovely. This is conformity. But do you know what? Looking at Nazi Germany, World War II, they were killing people. They weren't saying, oh, this line is the same as this line. They were killing people. So how could such a situation arise? So here's what Milgram does. He brings in two participants. However, these two participants, one works for Milgram and one is an actual participant. But, of course, the actual participant believes that this other guy, believes they're both participants. All right? That's called a confederate, by the way, a person that works for the experimenter, but other people don't know about it. And so he flips a coin, and it's a rigged coin. And he flips a coin to decide who's going to be the teacher and who's going to be the learner. And it turns out it's rigged in such a way that the confederate always is the learner, and the real participant is always the teacher. So he puts these two people in separate rooms. All right. In fact, they strap the learner, the confederate, right? They strap him into a chair, and they hook up a bunch of fancy-looking electrical apparatuses to him. And in fact, Milgram goes, "Oh, check this out! Bzz, ah, shit, that hurt." Okay. And, okay, he's hooked up to an electrical activity machine. Now, they bring him out to another room, set him up. Here is the experiment. The experiment is testing the effects of electrical shock and punishment on learning ability. And so what you're going to have to do is what they call the paired associate technique. You're going to need to read pairs of words to this learner. Okay? Say, for example, ladder, broom. All right, so that later on, when you say ladder, the learner has to say broom, okay? That's how it works, okay? Or bag, chair. I don't know. I'm coming up with things in the room. Bag, chair, okay? So the thing is set up now, and so they start this experiment, and as they're going through this experiment, first the teacher goes through all of these pairs of words, and then they get into the part of the experiment where he goes, okay, now the word is ladder. Is the correct response A, broom, B, garbage can, or C, I don't know, cord, right? And for the first 3 or 4 trials, everything goes cool, everything is right. All of a sudden, on the 4th or the 5th trial, the learner gets it wrong. Now, what is the teacher's job? The teacher's job is to administer electrical shock as punishment. You got it wrong, bzz. But there's a trick. And by the way, the participant administers electrical shock by pushing down these little switches. Okay? Now these switches are kind of funky because it goes like this. As the learner makes a mistake, you not only have to give them an electrical shock, but you have to increase the electrical shock every time. Okay? So if you make one mistake, bzz, second mistake, third, fourth, fifth, all the way up. These are labeled 15 volts all the way up to 450 volts, from 15 to 30 to 45, up to 450. And they're also labeled in groups of 3. Like the first 3 are labeled something like mild shock or something. Somewhere up in here they're labeled like moderate shock. Up in here it's like severe shock or something. Up in here it's something like danger maybe. Up at the top here it just says XXX. They don't even give it a name, okay? So you get the scenario. Now, of course, as I said, the learner is a confederate, works for Milgram, and so the learner is using a script. They always get the same ones right, wrong, etc. So what happens is, sometimes, by the way, sometimes people are sadistic bastards. I agree. They would just seem eager to start all the way up. Meanwhile, the learner has a script. When you receive this particular shock, I don't know, 120 volts, you're supposed to pound on the wall. When you receive 150 volts, you're supposed to yell, "Oh, my heart!" At 330 volts, or whatever this might be, you're supposed to not even respond anymore. Okay? You're just supposed to stop responding. And so this inevitably, well, not everybody. Some people, like I said, are sadistic bastards. They were just eager to punish people. But most people, at some point, are going to come up. And in fact, here's the learner that Milgram used in so many experiments. This guy is a great actor. And here is Milgram, and here's one of the teachers or the participants in this thing. And so, at some point, the teachers. Look at this. I didn't remember what I had. You see, at 75 volts, he goes, "Og," and "Og, Og, hey, this really hurts. Og, experimenter, that's all. Get me out of here. I told you, I had heart trouble." I mean, this is the script. And at some point, though, the teacher's going to go, "You know what, this isn't right. I think I'm hurting him." And so what does Milgram do? The first time a participant says, "Hey, I don't think so," because you see, here is the teacher, and here is Stanley Milgram just sitting there. He goes, I don't think this is a good idea." And what does Milgram say? Milgram says, please continue. And usually that's enough to get them to go, "Well, okay." If they protest a second time and say, this just doesn't feel right, "The experiment requires that you continue." "Oh, really? Okay." If they protest a third time, "It is absolutely essential that you continue." Okay? And a fourth time, "You have no other choice. You must go on." And if they protest after this, then stop. That's the end of the experiment, and let's register the last shock that you gave. Okay? That's how they're going to run this study. And it turned out that every single person gave up to 150 volts. 80% continued up to 150. Somewhere up in here, 70% continued out to 300 volts. I can't read from here. Okay, over 60% went all the way to the top. Okay, and like I said, somewhere up in here, there's not even they don't even answer anymore. So the participants are like, a lot of them. They have some very cool videos on this. The teachers are like, "There's no response. What should I do?" And so Milgram, "If there's no response, consider it incorrect and move on." It's like, and so they read the question, nothing. And you can see these teachers, they're just sweating. They're just like, "Oh my God, I think I killed him. Is he all right in there?" Don't worry. A lot of people were like, "But can I get arrested if I kill him?" And Milgram would be like, "No, we'll take care of it." And they're like, okay, as long as I ain't going to go to jail, it's okay, right? And it's crazy. And again, there was many versions on Milgram's study. And what we find is that different characteristics influence how much electrical shock people were willing to give. The victim's distance was a major one. In this scenario, the teacher is in a separate room from the learner, okay, and they're connected by a microphone. In another scenario, they're going to take the learner and move them in the same room with the teacher. And then in another scenario here, they're going to actually make so that the teacher must physically push the arm down onto an electrical plate. And as the distance decreased, the amount of electrical shock decreased. And that's not a surprise. As psychological distance increases, it becomes easier. And in fact, I remember when I was a kid, there was this little, why did Nazi Germany invent the gas chamber? To save money on bullets. That was this old rumor, ha ha ha, right? But what it was quite simple. The average German soldier, when commanded, shoot this person, had some problems with it. Had some problems either saying no, or later on had psychological problems because of it. But if it's set up like this, your job is to simply put these people in this room. Your job is to lock the door. Your job is to just flip that switch right there. That's all you have to do. What does it do? I don't know. Just flip that switch. That's your job. And all of a sudden they could commit murder without the people complaining, without the psychological side effects. It's crazy. Well, in different scenarios, they modified how close the desk was here. The closer this was, the more compliance you got. They modified different things. In some versions, he wears a white lab coat, and in some version, he wears jeans and a T-shirt. And if this experimenter, Stanley Milgram, is wearing jeans and a T-shirt, this guy's like, screw you, buddy. There is no way I'm doing this, okay? But if he's wearing a white lab coat, yes. He did this, he modified it. He was working at Princeton up in New Haven, Connecticut, and when he did it and said, I'm from Princeton, he got more compliance. But when he was like, I'm from Joe's College, there was much, much less compliance, okay? So the school had an impact. Blah. Okay. And so here's our 3 studies. Sharif's study was really about the formation of norms. We're social creatures, social contagion. It's who we are. Ash's study was about conformity, clearly a situation where we just go along to get along. Obedience, on the other hand, is a change in our behavior due to the direct command of another. And it turns out that we're going to talk about some of this stuff, that sometimes a very act of behaving in some way does in fact change our internal beliefs. Milgram and Ash devised experiments. Oh, I like this last quote. This is Milgram's quote. The most fundamental lesson of our study is that ordinary people simply doing their jobs and without any particular hostility on their part can become agents in a terrible destructive process. So going back to that question, were the German citizens nasty, evil, sadistic bastards? No. They were just ordinary people put into a horrible situation. If you and I were put into that situation, how would we act? I'd love to believe I would act nobly, but chances are I wouldn't, okay? Chances are I would behave the same as everybody else does. All right, I'm going to stop there, and we'll come back because this next material is a different stuff.